We are not going to waste your time tonight giving oxygen to some of the worst people in our society, people who celebrated Charlie Kirk's death, because it's not worth it. Millions are celebrating his life all over the world in what's become not just right versus wrong, but good versus evil. And good is definitely winning. Charlie's producer tweeting that Turning Point USA has gotten over 37,000 requests in the last 48 hours to start new campus chapters. To put that into perspective, Turning Point currently has 900 college chapters and around 1,200 high school chapters, meaning Charlie's dream could come true much, much faster than even he imagined. Good is winning, and I am happy to report that tonight. And maybe you saw this video of Charlie Kirk's body being transported to the funeral home in Arizona after he arrived from Utah this weekend. The motorcade nearly shut down the highway, something we typically only see when a president dies. And on a typical Monday night, the impulse from conservative media is to cycle through everything the legacy media said over the weekend and tell you that it's wrong. We all do it. It's certainly not unique to this show. But I don't think we have to do that anymore, do we? Do you really care what Ilhan Omar said over the weekend? We don't either. And if you notice, the legacy media never waste any time at all reacting to what we say or what they say on Fox or elsewhere. Do they? They don't. So why do we do it? Why do we waste your time making other people more famous and wealthier? If conservative media has a fault, this is it. And the first show to figure out how to do a show every night without playing clips from CNN or Morning Joe is going to have the #1 show in the country, bigger than Tucker ever was. Tucker, by the way, who was part of this special edition of the Charlie Kirk Show today. And we mentioned that because J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, hosted the show today to honor Charlie. Good is winning. Charlie was honored by more than 25 NFL teams yesterday. The Pittsburgh Steelers actually had a fly over their stadium. In Arizona, a 19-year-old named Ryder Corral tried to destroy a makeshift memorial to Charlie, but multiple people grabbed him. Look at your screen. One of the people was an older woman with gray hair. She tried to throw him to the ground. Ryder Corral, whose name I've now said twice deliberately, was arrested, as he should be. The point we're making is simple. People have had enough of the left. So do not lose your faith or your confidence in this country. We will survive this. And we were reminded of that repeatedly this weekend. While the left riots, the right prays. This happened all over the world. In Utah, the person suspected of assassinating Charlie Kirk, a 22-year-old who seemingly had a normal upbringing, but somehow was radicalized by the left to the point where he called Charlie Kirk a Nazi on a shell casing found at the scene. Now, why would anyone think that Charlie Kirk was a Nazi or Hitler or a fascist? And could it have anything to do with language like this?
Like Trump, Hitler was also viewed as a clown, a goon, who could be kept in line.
He's deliberately inviting the criticism that he is behaving like a Hitler or Mussolini-style fascist.
In that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the Garden for a so-called pro-America rally.
Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy.
He is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
Okay, remember all of that language and think about what happened on Wednesday. Tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. we are going to address the two questions that we have heard repeatedly since the assassination, and we are going to continue to call it an assassination and not a murder, for the same reason that Jackie Kennedy refused to change out of her blood-stained pink suit in 1963 after JFK was assassinated in Dallas. She wanted the world to see what they had done to her husband, and we've already noticed members of the media trying to downplay what happened to Charlie. The faster the media can make this routine, the better. But Charlie did not die in a car accident. Charlie Kirk was assassinated with a bolt-action rifle by a man named Tyler Robinson, who was reportedly dating his transgender roommate, a 22-year-old man named Lance Triggs, meaning last week the media lied to you when they tried to convince you that the guy who killed Charlie was a Trump supporter because his parents were registered Republicans. He was very much a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris supporter. And Tyler and Lance were very much on the left, the deepest, darkest corners of the left, and they were in love. And this is important. The shell casing of the round that killed Charlie Kirk had the words "notices bulges" on it. And you might be saying to yourself, well, what does that mean? Well, I didn't know either. Notices bulges was a reference to something called furry culture. Furry culture where people identify as animals. Furry culture, which also has ties to the trans community. And we have no idea if Lance Triggs is a nice person, and I don't want to be cruel, deliberately so. But Lance, the suspected shooter's boyfriend, thinks he's a wild animal, something they call a furry, where in reality, Lance, and I'm not trying to be cruel, is clearly a very confused young man. But we have indulged this behavior, this fantasy, for so long that we now live in a country where a 22-year-old man can roam the streets dressed as a wild animal, and we all have to look the other way and pretend like it's normal. CNN even wrote about it, writing that furry people are misunderstood. And that's the left in America today. And since the assassination, we have heard the same two questions. What happens now? And where do we go from here? And we're going to answer both of those questions tonight because we feel that you, after 5 days, deserve an answer. But first, the difference between the left and the right and how they react after tragedy on display all weekend long. But let's rewind. After George Floyd was killed in 2020, most Americans assumed what the media told them was true. This wasn't that long ago. We were told that a white police officer placed his knee on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes and killed him on purpose. Most people do not know that Derek Chauvin was trained to do exactly what he did. And they don't know that George Floyd was high on drugs at the time of his arrest and that he had a lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, or that he was COVID positive and had a heart condition, and that he had just violently resisted arrest. The public was never made aware of any of that, and that was done on purpose. After his death, rioting broke out in more than 100 cities across this country. People were killed. Police precincts were burned to the ground, and looting took place for weeks. The media called it the Summer of Love. And all this happened at the peak of a global pandemic, yet somehow, apparently, you couldn't get COVID-19 if you were rioting on behalf of George Floyd.
Vehicle still up in flames here over at Andrew Young and Peachtree. And if you take a look over here, if you pan over, I want to show you. This is what they were handing out at that protest. So it was a largely peaceful protest.
Christine, Laura, what you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not generally speaking unruly, but fires have been started.
In 1968, after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, there was rioting in over 150 cities across America. 40 people were killed as looters and rioters burned neighborhoods to the ground. What better way to honor a man who preached about peace by looting and rioting and torching cities across the country? Again, the point we are making is a simple one. 5 days ago, a conservative icon was assassinated in cold blood on video. Millions have seen that video. But conservatives did not riot. Conservatives did not loot. Conservatives did not set anything on fire. Conservatives have not called for revenge of any kind. Instead of burning buildings, rioting, and looting, conservatives spent the weekend holding vigils. On social media, it has been posts about faith, prayer, and healing. While the left mock Charlie Kirk and laugh at his death, it is clear the left and the right in this country are just not the same. The left are now a party of violence. That is not open for negotiation or debate anymore. They are a party of death, and that shouldn't be open for debate.
Well, the problem is on the left. If you look at the problem is on the left. It's not on the right, like some people like to say. You look at the scum that speaks so badly of our country, the American flag burnings all over the place. That's the left. That's not the right. They're already under major investigation. A lot of the people that you would traditionally say are on the left. We wouldn't celebrate if something happened on their side, and we don't. These are sick people. These are really deranged people.
That from the same man who once said peacefully and patriotically on January 6th. Think about the last 3 weeks. 2 weeks ago, a transgender shooter, 8 in the morning, shot outside a church, blowing out the stained glass windows, shards of glass wedged in people's flesh. 2 children were killed. They were on their knees praying at the time of their death. Last week, we learned about the innocent Ukrainian refugee stabbed to death for no reason on the light rail in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a man who should never have been on that train. And then it was Charlie on Wednesday, killed by someone who listened to the left, heard their message, and took it seriously. Back to those 2 questions. What happens now, and where do we go from here? What happens now, if you are a Democrat or an independent, you go and register as a Republican, and you go to the ballot box and you vote for people with common sense. Sense enough to know the difference between right and wrong. Because everybody we just named, including Charlie, should still be here today. But they aren't because of broken policies from the left. America is at war right now. It's not a war with traditional armies, but it is a war, and it is definitely not civil.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.